Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Kansas City-based saxophonist and author Adam Larson. He talked to us about his new 2022 CD, With Love, from Chicago. This new album will be the first of a trilogy that will be released on Outside in Music on February 11th, 2022. He plans to release albums over the next 18 months with a new cordless trio, joined by two of Chicago's finest musicians, and bassist Clark Sommers and drummer Dana Hall. He spoke with Neon Jazz way back in March of 2020 when the world started making its first COVID transformation. This new interview is full of hope with albums, tour dates, growth, and so much more. Enjoy.
Hey, man,
Cool.
Thank you for taking a minute out.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for wanting to do it.
Yeah, it's weird. I have this kind of certain amount of nostalgia because you were actually one of the very first interviews I did once I absorbed the shock of the whole COVID shutdown in March of 2020. So it's good to catch up with you.
Yeah, likewise.
And at that time, and this will be contextual for the fact that you have, a trilogy of records coming out, at that point, we had no idea what was going on, no idea how this was going to mutate and turn into something that would be this long.
Sure.
So I guess before we get to the albums, with that being said, how have you been doing? I know that, things were, with everybody in the Kansas City scene, it was really going along so well, and then March 2020 comes along. So how have you been doing since all of that happened?
I think it's fair to say everybody has had to deal with the reality of the situation in different ways. I've been very fortunate, to have my family throughout all this, first of all, but also, I had some things in place before the pandemic hit that made it less uncomfortable, perhaps, than it would have been had I not had those things. So, I've taught a virtual studio of students for a decade, starting in 2009. So, I had a lot of more or less steady income already kind of in place online pre-pandemic, which was kind of a godsend. I think the thing that having a taste of being able to play out for the first time, I think it was probably 2021, or I can't remember. It's all kind of a blur, to be honest. But the first time I got a chance to play was, I think, May of 2021, so over a year and change of not really playing anywhere. And the thing that struck me was just how thankful I was for the opportunity to do that, because after a year and a half or so behind screens, it's just challenging to stay motivated, challenging not to get depressed, but all things considered, I'm happy that my family is healthy and that we were able to make it through, hopefully, what is the worst of it. I can't believe we're in the third year of it coming up here, but, there are a lot of things that I was able to lean into as a jazz musician, it's part of being a musician, and a creative musician is trying to be creative and figure out ways to solve problems, and so I think if COVID has proved anything, I don't know if it was necessarily a good thing to prove, or who knows, but I think that it's entirely possible, to sustain using, internet as a pretty powerful tool. A lot of work, of course, but, there have been things that I did during the pandemic that I've tried to repeat. We're still in a pandemic, right? But I've tried to repeat those same things as a way of providing some type of consistent income into my daily life. So, yeah, I'm kind of rambling, but it hopefully gives you a little bit of insight into what's been going on.
Oh, and it's great because there is so much to say, and there is so much that's transpired, and it's been a blur. So what did you, of course, as you mentioned, musicians had to pick up a whole lot of new skills between, getting savvy technologically, producing, all of those things. But, kind of in a more aggro sense, what did you learn about yourself over this time that maybe you didn't realize before that's going to make you stronger as we hopefully do reemerge in 2022 and you have new material to promote and play live?
Yeah, first of all, the music technology part of it was really important for me. Prior to the pandemic beginning, I never opened GarageBand really seriously, and certainly I never recorded anything because for better or for worse, I just never really needed that to be a part of, or never wanted, furthermore, that to be a part of what I wanted to do, so like learning Logic a little bit, making my way around GarageBand was a stressful thing for me. My father is a musician, as is my mother, and my father has a background in music technology, so I think he was there's been 2 times in his life where he's probably been pretty mortified about me as a son. First time was when I had no concept of rhythm when I started playing saxophone because he's a drummer, and the second time was probably 2 years ago when I didn't know what an XLR cable was. So it's like, trying to figure out all that technology was really great, and I learned a lot about recording process on my own from a home laptop, and I think that, again, those skills of being able to reach a wider, audience via social media and the products that I've together and put out. I mean, these are things that are going to translate into many years to come, So I think I'm touring the record starting next month, so I think, the things that I've been able to put together in terms of pumping out, how I pump out the information and on what schedule and how I do that, certainly through different channels has been helpful to try to connect the community, because at the end of the day, that's what should be all about, is really connecting with, community. Yeah, I mean, the technology part behind all of this was important for me to try to get a handle on. I've been able to, teach all my lessons and do online workshops and create books and record tracks and this kind of stuff. So it's been a good learning curve for me to try to get with.
So before we get into the February 11th release on Outside in Music with Love from Chicago, you mentioned getting out on the road, which, as far as I'm concerned, that's the best music to my ears that you cats are going to be able to get back out. Talk to me a little bit about what's up, how that's transpiring now.
I'm really looking forward to the push next month. We're going to do, I don't know how many events. I'll walk through them with you. So we're going to start the tour on February 9th with a masterclass and performance at Truman State University, and then we're going to make our way back to Kansas City that evening to play the only Kansas City show. We're doing a special show at Westport Coffee House and Theater at 7 p.m., so that'll be really fun to share this trio with the KC community. And then the next day we do a masterclass at Kansas University with Matt Otto and Dan Gailey. And then in the evening we play at Missouri Western Jazz Festival out in St. Joseph. And then on Friday the 11th of February, when the CD releases, we're actually at the Jewel in Omaha for a couple sets, 6:30 and 8:30. And then the following day, which is the 12th, we're at Simpson College, where we're doing a master class at 3 p.m., open to the public, and a concert open to the public at 7 p.m. And then the following week, I go out to the Chicago area, and we do a master class at Roosevelt College on the 17th in the city, and then play the Jazz Estate in Milwaukee that evening. And then on the 18th, we're at the Green Mill. I'm making my debut at the Green Mill, which is really cool for me. And we're going to augment the trio to make it a quartet, have some chords in there, just because the Mill is a fairly large venue. Might need some it'd be nice to have some chordal backup. So Matt Gold, who's an amazing guitarist, is going to be joining us for the 2 nights at the Mill. So that's Friday the 18th and Saturday the 19th. And then Saturday the 19th during the day, we're doing a special masterclass and performance at PM Woodwind, which is a saxophone boutique dealership store in Evanston, Illinois. So, I don't know how many events that is. It's probably at least 10, but we're going to be pretty busy over the first 2 weeks of February, and then we reunite for a few things in April. It's nice to be able to play a mixture of clubs and also colleges, because my whole thing as a musician is heavily steeped in education and performance. So that's kind of the slate of events for the second and third week of February, which is great in the time frame that we're releasing this album.
Talk to me a little bit about the first album, With Love from Chicago. It's the first in the trilogy, out on February the 11th. And I know Chicago has played a pretty instrumental role in your development as a musician. So kind of talk to me a little bit about this project.
First of all, the gentlemen on the record are, some of the best musicians, just, full stop, that I've ever played with. I got a chance to play with both of them together for the first time in 2014 or 15. I came to Chicago as a teenager with drummer Bernard Harper. I was subbing his band in 2008, I believe, 2009 maybe. I guess it was 2008 because I was a freshman in college. And so we played a week there. And I was a sideman, and Joe Siegel, who recently passed away, he booked everybody from, from Parker forward. So he was always at the club, and I got to meet him when I was a young kid in the music, and he was always kind, but also wasn't afraid to tell me how it really was. So we developed a relationship that eventually allowed me to lead my own band there. I guess that'd be 6 years later. So that band consisted of myself, Clark Sommers on bass, Dana Hall on drums, my mentor, Jim Howski on tenor, who's in his own right one of the greatest saxophone players, again, just full stop. But certainly in Chicago, he's a hero. And so I remember putting the people together for that band, and I brought one musician from New York, a great guitarist named Neil Weinholders on my first record. And I was talking to John about who we should have in the rhythm section. He just pretty much insisted that I call Clark and Dana, which I remember being pretty intimidating for me because I had only known those guys' reputation. So I called them, and it was a good week. And I kind of looked for another opportunity to play with those guys. So in 2017, I was back at the showcase, and I had both Clark and Dana in the band, and Fabian Almazan come out with me from New York on my most recent recording. It's called Listen With Your Eyes. And so we developed a pretty good relationship there musically, all three of us. But Clark and I are really, really close friends, so much so that my second son, that's his namesake. So, my son, my younger son, Clark, is named after Clark Sommers, and Clark is his godfather. So, the relationship on this record goes deep musically and personally, which I think is why, in my opinion, this is one of the stronger records I've ever put out, just because there's a really good energy and chemistry between everybody, and Dana and Clark have been playing together for at least 20 years. They are a formidable, backline in the Chicago scene, for decades at this point. So, ironically, I grew up in Illinois. I know that, we probably already talked about that, but 2 hours south of Chicago, but I never really went to Chicago as a kid because there was always age restrictions to go to shows, and there was never age restrictions by comparison to go see stuff at Jazz at the Bistro. And typically, to be quite frank, the programming was a little bit stronger at Jazz at the Bistro at the time. So my playing in Chicago was almost exclusively after I'd already moved to New York. So I would come back and use that as a place that I would play very, very regularly from 2010 through 2017, 2018. So I'm looking forward to getting back there, but this band is it's a lot of fun to play with. There's a lot of trust, which means you can take a lot of risk, and that's something that I think too, like with my own playing, I feel like I have become less risk averse over the years, a little bit more interested in letting some things quote unquote go wrong or get weird, which is something that when I was 18, 19, even 23 when I put up my first record, it was the exact opposite. So hope that gives a little bit of historical background.
Yeah, and I know listening to it, it's such a powerful release. There's such an energy, a good, powerful energy to it. And
thank you.
It almost, yeah, you bet. And it almost seems as though it's kind of a triumphant sound, like, what? We're back. We're getting over this thing that knocked us all down. We're getting back. That's my perception. But what I'd like to know from you is, what are you hoping the listener gets from not only this album, but this trilogy of releases that are going to be coming out?
I just hope the listener gets a chance to hear, first of all, me playing a different concept that, so far hasn't been recorded. Playing in trio is one of the most liberating and terrifying things you can do as a saxophone player, because on the one hand, you're kind of no longer beholden to what's going on in the chordal situation, so you can be a little bit more daring. But on the other hand, if you have to rein things in, you have to be really aware of how to do that at kind of the drop of a hat. You don't have anybody else helping to guide that conversation. So, I hope that people enjoy the music. I hope they get a chance to see, certainly on this record, the showcasing of not only my compositions, but certainly Clark. Clark actually contributes one more composition than I do on this record, and I love that. As much as I love to write, I also really enjoy playing other people's music. The nature of what I do is so heavily leader-based that sometimes I wish I played more as a sideman. So getting the chance to play other people's music, I get to get into a different headspace, and I really enjoy that. So I hope people can listen to this record and just hear the different influences too. The single that just dropped today, Angle and Babysitter, there's a whole story behind that, and it's the music is heavily influenced by two people that couldn't have any less to do with each other on paper, which is Michael Brecker and Tupac Shakur. So it's like I would like people to listen to the record and first of all just hopefully enjoy it, but if you hate it, that's cool too. I've always said in my educational stuff, like, as the worst thing we can do as musicians is to offer up something that people are indifferent about. If somebody hates the record, great, I'm glad you feel that way. If you love it, I'm glad you feel that way. But if it's like ho-hum, I don't have an opinion, then I feel like I've done something wrong somehow, So some type of visceral reaction is what I'm looking for, and I think it's cool to see also put the spotlight on the different people in my musical life that have really pushed me, and that I feel like I have a really strong connection with, in different cities. And I think it's kind of I think that's the part of the narrative that I hope people find most interesting is that, I lived in New York for close to 12 years, but I've also, done a lot to make relationships and music with other people over the country, not least of which the people in Kansas City, so that's the second record that comes out in the fall. So I guess that's kind of what I'm hoping people to feel is understand the narrative and enjoy the music, on a certain level.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the Kansas City link and kind of your link to, New York and Chicago. As we recover, not only as, people, but as like a city, you're a leader, clearly a leader, releasing albums during this year. How do you see your role with releasing albums in Kansas City and the overall recovery of the jazz scene in Kansas City as things open up and we hopefully all start kind of getting back out there and resuscitating what we lost back in March of 2020?
Well, in some respects, I think it's, support is just, we all need to support each other, and one thing I hope changes is that we go from saying things like, oh, I'll try to make it, which never means anybody's going to make it, or like, yeah, I'll see if I'm available, to like, okay, I can't come, or I'm going to be there, something definitive, because after 3 years, or more, hopefully not, but, being inside, I hope we would kind of like think about how we, how we choose to actually physically show up and support music, so like that's part of it, but also, I've, since the start of the fall, September, I've hosted a jam session at Westport Coffee House every second Sunday, where it's kind of a guided thing. The house band has been really strong. Typically it's myself, John Kazilmuk, Ben Leifer, and Roger Wilder. We play a house band set, then we open up a jam session for anybody who wants to play, with that, starting with that house band. So it's a great opportunity, for college students, high school students, adults, whoever, to come and play with, what I consider to be, some of the best musicians, period, not just in Kansas City, but period, so, in that way, I feel like that's on some way to build community, but making this record is something that I wanted to, because I actually recorded the Kansas City record first. We recorded that in June of 2021, and we did the Chicago record in August of 2021, so my first impetus was to record the people that I've been inspired by, for a long time. Obviously, living here, working with John and Ben is great, but also, having visited through the Kansas City area as a touring artist in the past, those are the guys that I called first. So I'm not sure how what role I have in the scene getting back to what it is, but I would just say that we all have a role, and a responsibility to try to be out as much as we can and support. And I include myself in that statement. It's difficult sometimes to make the extra effort to get out and see somebody or support a project, but especially if it's something that you really, that you've missed in the past 3 years, go out and support it. There's not really a replacement for that. No social media like or share or whatever is going to replace bodies, at shows actually taking in the music and showing their support that way. So, just an awareness of that. This is probably a different topic or a different interview, but just, trying to do what we can as musicians to help foster, venues that are interested in creating and presenting creative music too, which is a whole different animal,
That's perfect. Adam, man, thank you for opening up about the album and about the world. It's great to hear that things are just moving on, and it's wonderful that you guys are doing that, so good luck with everything.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Chicago, New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Adam for his continued cool, raising Kansas City up, and for all that music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.